And we are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an all new DTI Takeover Show. For those of you who are just tuning in, it is your girl, Miss Kayla. I am standing here for my host, G Sweets and Silas the Third, who may or may not pop in. You know how we do. But welcome. We have another show for you today. I am very interested to see what we're gonna talk about. Without prolonging this, I'm not gonna hold y'all up no more. I have the beautiful young lady with me today. Her name is Nefertara. Am I saying that right?
It's perfect. We didn't even practice.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes, Nefertara Clark. She's a part of Clark and Clark. Is it Law? Clark
Uh-huh.
Clark Law. She is an author. She is a speaker as well. She's gonna let us know a little bit about Daddy. Tell me a story.
Absolutely.
Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am fabulous. It's rainy here in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm good. Other than that, and the rain is nice anyway. So it's a nice day. Great day.
It's raining here, but it's cold.
It's hot here. It's hot here.
I'm mad. I'm very jealous about that.
Yes, it's been warm for the past week. Literally, it's been very warm. But yeah, so very, very happy to be here to share a little bit about Daddy Tell Me a Story.
Okay. Well, so first let's talk a little bit about you first. Tell us a little bit about Nefertara. I love that name. I love your name.
Thank you. So I'll start with that. So my name means blessed and beautiful, or the blessed one has arrived. My dad actually wanted to name me Nefertiti, but my mom was like, no, kids will pick, she's an educator. She's like, no, kids will pick on her and they'll call her Titty. That's literally the conversation they were having. And so he got her to agree to Nefertara. So that's how I got my name.
Got it.
Thank you for I'm so happy to be here on the show. So I am an attorney. I've been an attorney since I was 24. So for the past what 15 years. 15 years I have been an attorney, and I was a Fulton County public defender. And so I still have that public defender heart because I did that for so long, working with those who, the downtrodden, the poor, those who like cast aside. So that was very rewarding work. But after about 7.5 years, I left the public defender's office and entered private practice with my dad. And so now we have two offices, one in Atlanta, which I run, and then we have one outside of Athens. And we have 4 primary practice areas, and that's estate planning, which is my favorite. I have actually wrote a book last year as well about estate planning, but estate planning, personal injury, criminal, and business matters, so business law and that sort of thing. So those are our 4 overarching practice areas. I have a dog who is right here beside me, sleep perfectly. She will stay that way throughout the show. And I just really enjoy spending time with my friends and family because I don't get a lot of downtime, so I love to travel. So that is me in a nutshell.
How is it working with your father?
So there are good parts, and I won't say they're bad parts. They're like less than desirable parts in that my dad is old school. He gets up, puts on a suit every day of the week, like even Saturdays. And so his practice style is a little bit different than mine. I'm more laid back. Like I told you today, I wore a polo and leggings to the office. So my style is just a little bit more laid back than his, I guess, which is to be expected because I'm a different generation.
Right.
It's great to have him and as a sounding board, like when I'm like second guessing myself, that imposter syndrome sneaks in. Like, well, is this right, Daddy? And that sort of thing. So it's great to just have somebody I can text or call who has, been on this path for a lot longer than I have. And so the other part is like, he's like, well, you're not going to the office today? We're like, no, Daddy, I have Wi-Fi, printer, computer at home. I don't have to go to the office to be productive. That's the little back and forth that we have sometimes about me not going to the office every day. But it's a great practice. So happy that I did leave the public defender's office. But the friendships and the connections that I made there have actually benefited my practice because my practice has been booming since I opened up. So it's a great spot to be in.
That's awesome. So have y'all ever got to a point where you're like, all right, Dad, like I know you've been doing this, but I think I might be right on this one. And he like, no.
Not really, because that's actually a very good question, but not really because like when I ask him a question, like we don't really have he and I don't have disagreements. Like it's surprisingly, we don't. He's very mild mannered, and I'm very high strung. So like, we're opposite, and we balance each other. But
Mm-hmm.
like, he'll ask me like, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I'll tell him what I think. He's like, "Yeah, that's what I was thinking," or vice versa. So we just kind of bounce ideas off each other and just come, to the best way to handle the situation for a client. So fortunately, we don't bump heads.
That's good. Like that is so good. Cause listen,
Mhm.
I could picture me and my mother now.
Now, see,
Yes,
my mama.
sir.
Like we are best friends, like truly, but we are so much alike that we
Oh,
do like we yeah.
exactly.
Mhm,
Got you. I'm right there with you. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all. So, what made you decide that you're gonna be an author?
So for this particular book, so I actually have written like chapters and textbooks and a few other things just through my practice. But and like law review wrote articles and that sort of thing. But like this full book is so interesting. I have a friend who we publish books like the same time. She's like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm joining this book writing program through. It's actually started out at Georgetown,
Okay.
and it got so big. It was a professor there, Eric Koester, who literally felt that his students should leave college with something other than a college degree. So he started having them write a book. So every semester, his students would write books. So he branched out and created this program. And
Wow.
she told me about it. And my dad, like literally, she told me about it. So it's like, I'm down. I want to do it because during the pandemic, I left home at 17 to go to college, have not lived back with my parents since that time. So for, 21 years, I've been essentially a full grown adult for the most part.
Right.
And so during the pandemic, court shut down. People didn't know this was before they figured out Zoom and WebEx,
Right.
all
Right.
the things, right? And so like I wasn't doing anything every day. So like I went to stay with my parents. So like I would go home and stay 3 or 4 days, then come back and check on my house and go back and
Mhm.
forth that way throughout the pandemic. The beginning part of the pandemic. And so one day we were like having a game night and just talking, and my dad has always talked about wanting to like have his life story written, but just has never had the time, taken the time, found the time, etc.
Mhm.
And so we had been talking about it, and then when she mentioned the program, I was like, "Hey, I could write my dad's life story." And so that's really how it came about, that I decided to write the book. And like during that same game night, we were kind of talking about, well, what would the title of the book be? So we kind of
Right.
talked about what titles of our books would be. So my mom's, I remember hers. My dad's, of course, we wrote that down, but like I can't remember mine to save my life, like what I said the title of my book would be. But
Mhm.
my mama was like, you know what you should name it? And she's like, what did you always say to your daddy when you were writing? And I thought for a second, it was like, Daddy, tell me a story. And so there's a story behind the title. Um,
Aww.
so that was like, as a kid, I loved to read. Like I really had to read because I didn't get a chance to watch TV a lot. My parents were very strict about 30 minutes of TV. That's all you get. Like you do your schoolwork, you play, like, but you're not going to be in front of the TV. And so reading was like my pastime. And in the car, like my dad was very big in the NAACP here in the state of Georgia,
Okay.
doing some stuff nationally. And he would drive all over the state to different, like speaking to different conferences, to different conventions, and I
Mhm.
would ride with him. And when it got too dark to read, or when I got tired of reading, I would just say, "Daddy, tell me a story." And like this was literally a refrain that I would always say because I love to hear about how he grew up, literally with no electricity. Like he grew up on a dirt road, just like how he grew up on a farm, and all those things were so interesting to me. And I always want him to tell me those stories. And so that is how we came up with the title of the book. And also on the cover of the book is a Volkswagen, which he still has to this day, that I would often be asking him to tell me a story in. So that's how I decided to write the book and how I came up with the title of the book.
That's so dope.
Oh, thank you.
Now, before we do dive into this book, I am curious to know during those rides. You stated that your dad did a lot with the NAACP and things like that. What were some things that you saw while he was meeting with these people? Because that's major.
It is like I saw like people literally being galvanized to like change things in their communities because we
Mhm.
are from Elbert County, which is very small. The population might be about 10,000, like for the whole county, like one high school that everybody goes to, one middle school that everyone goes to, like that type
Wow.
of situation. And oftentimes in those communities where it's majority white, Black people, people of color, don't feel encouraged to speak out because,
Mhm.
like, oh, I might lose my job, or they might do this to my kid, or they might
Yeah.
harass us and arrest us and put charges on us and things of that nature. But
Right.
see people who like felt like they had some support because he's a lawyer. Well, you might not know, but now he's a lawyer, and so people felt like, okay, I have this lawyer who's going to be on my side, who is
Mhm.
here for me and here to ask questions for us. And a lot of things he did pro bono, or he just like pay me what you can. Like he wasn't like charging people for his services. He was doing them too just because he wanted the world to be a better place. So
Wow.
seeing people be encouraged and seeing people be supported, that's like the whole thing about community. So like it's all
Mhm.
about community, like for him, and that's why I'm donating 100% of the proceeds of the book, because we want to help others.
That's so amazing. Oh, shout out to Dad. So amazing.
Thank you.
So what can we look forward to seeing and reading in Daddy Tell Me a Story?
Okay, so there are 3 parts of the book.
Okay.
The first part is sewing. The second part is growing, and then the third part is reaping. And so those are what the parts are broken up to. And so it starts with like his childhood. That's what we learned, like growing up on a farm. Someone actually mentioned to me, because I talk about this, like making syrup, because they made syrup with mules and like literally leading the mule around and around and around to press the syrup out, to get it to like boil. So there's stories about how they made syrup, stories about like near death experiences on the bank of the river. He
Mm,
had 11 siblings. There's a little bit of sadness in the book because one of his siblings died at a very young age.
mm,
There are stories about his military time. There's story about the practice of law and like some major cases that he has litigated that have actually made federal law. And then there's also, a part about like successors, not just successors for the firm, but successors in life. Like, who do you want to come after you? And a little
mhm.
bit of encouragement, because I think that everyone should like talk to their elders, write your stories. Like anybody can write a book. Like it is hard and it's difficult and it's a daunting process, but it's possible. And
Mhm.
I'll share a favorite story in a second, but last but not least, there's a book club discussion guide. So for
Okay.
those who are in book clubs and they would like to read the book and discuss it, there are already questions in the book. And then there is prostate cancer resource guide, because my father is a survivor of prostate cancer, and
Wow.
it disproportionately impacts men of color. And
Mhm.
so there are stories like in the book about his ordeal, but there are also resources at the back of the book, so that those who are interested in sharing it with someone who might have been diagnosed with prostate cancer, like how they can early detection is the key. Like
Right. Right.
cancer is one of those cancers that most people survive if they detect it early enough.
Right.
Those are the stories that are in the book. It's about family, it's about courage, it's about perseverance. Those are the overarching themes of the book. And one of my favorite stories in the book is about my grandfather, who the book is actually dedicated to my paternal grandmother and grandfather.
Mhm.
Maternal grandfather died before I was born. However, my paternal grandmother, I love to say that I was her favorite because I really think that I was. She and I like lived to develop a relationship. She passed away like while I was an adult, like while I was a practicing attorney, and so
Mhm.
we had a long time to like develop a relationship and have our own relationship. But one story that that continues to stand out to me from the book is how, because my father's family was poor, and
Mhm.
so I said, well, if y'all were poor, how did y'all have like 100+ acres of land and a farm?
Right.
Things? Yes, and
Right.
so the story behind that is what's so crazy is I didn't like think to ask this question as a child, but as an adult, when I'm going back over the stories that I've jotted down, like, well, why this and how that and all those sorts of things,
Mhm.
he's like, oh, there's a story to that. So the story to that is my grandfather was a sharecropper. And for those who don't know, a sharecropper is a person who, they don't have their own land. They live on and work another person's land. And in that process, they, might get loans from them for like their seeds and the fertilizer and the things that they need. And at the end of the harvest season, once all the crops have been gathered, they take that and then they can sell that. But then what gets deducted are like rent, the money that you've like loaned or been been loaned for like seeds and crops and all of that. And whatever's left is what you have earned, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandfather and his brothers were very proud men, and the Caucasians, the white people in that time, still now actually, but during that time, did not like that. And so World War II was going on, and there was a draft, and so the guy who he was sharecropping for had him drafted. In hopes of having him killed. That was like the goal of him going to World War II and being killed. Well, he was not killed. In fact, like every dollar that he could send home, like he basically the army provided his, clothing and food and all that, his house.
Right.
So he was sending everything home to my grandmother and she saved it. And so when he got out of the army, they bought the land. Unfortunately, it was adjoining the same guy's land, Pearl Acock. I mean, it's in the book. I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's in the book. Adjoining his land. And that's how they got all those acres of land. And there are also a few stories about how he terrorized them and killed their crops if they got too close to his property. But that is how they came to have all that land. And so that's just a story for me that just reminds me of God's like ever powerful presence and his ability to take what somebody means for evil and turn it around for good. And after my grandfather died, my grandmother, my father was the oldest kid at the time. I keep saying, because you don't know. So
it's okay. I'm with you. I'm all in.
Grandmother, my father was the oldest like male child at the time, and he was just 15, and he could not work the farm, alone. So they sold the property, but that still allowed them to like have a lasting legacy because they sold the property and bought a house in town, as they call it. So in Athens, Georgia, which is most known for the University of Georgia. But they bought a house there, and the house is still there. Like one of my aunts actually lived in it, and it's a house that will, I'm sure, be passed on to other family members, at her passing. But that is how they were able to buy the land and have like property and have resources. So that's like my favorite story from the book. Are you frozen?
Back.
Okay, here we are.
It's there. That's my internet. I'm like,
Okay.
no, don't lose connection. It's getting good. Okay, so
the last thing you heard.
So last thing I heard was, your grandparents, they bought a house in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So after my grandfather passed away, my father was the eldest male child.
Yes.
He was 15. So he didn't have the ability to like work that entire farm by himself.
Right.
And
Okay.
so my grandmother sold the land. But at that point in time, she was able to use that money to buy a house, and as they call it, in town, but it was in Athens, Georgia. And Athens is where the University of Georgia is, for those who haven't, heard of Athens, Georgia. But that's where she bought a home and raised, the rest of her minor children, because at that point, only 4. So out of the 11 children she had, only 4 were like over the age of 18. So she
Mm,
had 7, and she bought a house with the money from the property that she was able to sell, but that my grandfather bought with money that that was never intended for him to have, because it
right,
was intended
right.
for him to go and be killed. So that's one of my favorite stories from the book, and it just is a reminder that what God intends for you to have, you're going to have. What's meant for you is going to be for you.
That is so crazy because we were just having a conversation earlier, literally, about when people have intentions or when something is set up to destroy you,
Mm-hmm.
and then it turns around and God has set it up for it to work for your good. And so for that to come back full circle with you telling your story, now I got goosebumps.
Confirmation, yes, yes.
I got goosebumps a little bit. Wow.
Mhm.
You have so much history in your family alone.
Yes, and
I can only imagine. So is the book, it has like, how many different stories would you say is in your book? Just a roundabout.
maybe 50. There are a lot of stories in the book. There,
Okay.
literally stories of them growing up on a farm. So like there were certain crops that were the key crops that they sold. And for example, watermelon was one of those. So they didn't really get to eat a lot of watermelon because it's like, we're selling these. And so what they would do is like the kids would go and sneak like some of the smaller watermelon. They would, bust them open with a rock or, something to like get them open and then like share them amongst themselves. And so what they quickly learned is like you can't sneak watermelon with everybody, because like some of the younger kids would often go back and like
Yeah.
tell or yeah, exactly. So like you had to be careful about who you snuck the crops with. And so after they ate them, there was, a creek and like, a river and all sorts of like water. So they would like go and like wash the remnants of their, like the evidence of their crime, so to speak,
Mhm.
off in the water. Cause summertime would be nothing for them to like take off their shirts for the boys and like get in the water and things like that.
Right.
And so there are fun stories. Another story that, and I actually there's one chapter, I believe, yes, chapter 9, that is my story, more so about my father, because my father, because of the types of cases that he handled, like he did a lot of like lawsuits to integrate the police department, the fire department,
Mhm.
lawsuits to change the voting from at large, where everybody in the county votes, to like district voting, so it would increase the probability and chance of you're someone who representing you who looks like you and also lives in your same community, so y'all have the same issues going on. And
Mhm.
so there was a lawsuit going on for desegregation of a fire department in another county. And on our post office, because just like, one high school, one middle school, there's one main post office in
Wow.
so I mean, there are like 3 in the county, but there's one in
Mhm.
like the county seat, which is where the courthouse and things of that nature are. But every Labor Day, because I have to remember May is from Memorial Day, so every
I
Labor
do the same thing.
I have to pause there to make sure I get it right. Every Labor Day, we would
Mhm.
go to Jacksonville, because Savannah State, which is like my parents' alma mater as well as mine, would play Bethune-Cookman College. So and it was also their anniversary. So we go for the weekend. I stay with family friends, and they would do their own thing for their anniversary.
Mhm.
So we came back, literally came back like that Monday, which was Labor Day. On Tuesday, when he went to the office, um, police came to his office and like asked the secretaries to see him, and they let him in, and they showed him, and a copy of it is in the book, but they showed him a death threat. There was a death threat on the front of the post office door, offering $5,000 to anyone who would kill him. And so $5,000 is nothing to like sneeze at or laugh at now, that's money. But back in 1990,
Major.
that part, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. But yeah, offering $5,000 to anyone who would kill him. And so there were like lots of offers. My dad, he hunts. He has like a shotgun. So he
Mhm.
doesn't have a handgun or anything like that. People offered to give him guns. People offered to like allow us to come like stay with them. Like all
Right.
sorts of offers of protection. But he was like, no, like God is God, whatever God intends is going to happen. Like 11 Alive, which is the Atlanta News, like came and interviewed him. It was just a lot around it, but like there was not a lot of major coverage on it locally. And so, the thought is like the local police didn't care if anything happened. Like, yes, they came and told him because that was protocol. And they're like, I have
But
the
you really right. They didn't really care less if it really happened or not. Like,
exactly, because like the incident report is also like I have photographs in the book, so there's a photograph at the beginning of every chapter, and so the incident report is in the book, and it's like literally about 3 sentences. No supplemental report, no follow-up report, and like weeks later, like the FBI like got involved like briefly, but
mhm.
literally that didn't change his resolve. He didn't stop doing the kind of cases he did, and even that day he didn't even come home from the office early. So he's just
Even even with a $5,000 bounty on his head,
mm-hmm. Yep,
he stayed at work.
he stayed at work.
So
Yes.
what are you doing at this time?
I was in third grade. So it was 1990. So I was in third grade. And so literally my mother called me into the den. It's like she wanted me to, she's like, come, Tara, hurry up, come see something. And so when I get in there, he's being interviewed on the news. Like they interviewed him, asked him questions. And I have a snippet of that in the book as well. Like interviewing him, asking him questions like, how does this make you feel? Like, are you going to, stop? And essentially he was like, if they kill me, I pray that they don't, but the work will continue. That's literally, his statement to the news commentator about like why this did not change his resolve or deter him in the work that he was doing. So my story about that actually is from I don't remember the year, but it was early 2000s. Well,
Mhm.
probably like late 2000s. I began practicing in 2007, probably 2010 or somewhere around there. But how I kind of flash forward to that or flashback from this point in time as to like a conversation I was having with friends and how that from childhood impacted me, but
Right.
counseling, prayer, and all of those things, because that's the most traumatic thing. As a kid, you're like, well, somebody wants to kill my daddy. Like, your parents are your whole world. Like your nuclear family is your whole world at that age. And so just like the impact it had on me, like all those years later, and how through like, counseling and prayer and things of that nature, that I've been able to like move past that point in my life. So yeah.
That's a lot. I was gonna ask you, how did that affect you?
Mm-hmm.
And that was definitely gonna be my next question for sure. Was how I guess how does that shape your mind kind of
Yeah.
to witnessing that, to witnessing these people put a bounty on your father's head
Mm-hmm.
growing up?
Yeah, so like going back to my mom calling me in there, and so I watched, and she's like, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I'm like, "No," and I literally
No,
went back to
no,
yes, no,
my
I went
daddy's
back-
on the news. Somebody trying to kill him, but I don't want to talk about it.
but
No.
like and like literally like looking back on that, I see so much of my personality. Like I
Okay.
generally even though I'm like bubbly and all these things, like I'm generally very stoic. I don't like let my emotions be known. I internalize things.
Gotcha.
But that's the heart attack kind of people. So like don't need to be internalizing things.
Right.
But I was stressed, truly, because
Okay.
I couldn't like rest until like he walked through the door every night for a while,
Right.
thinking I'm gonna be called to the principal's office to be like, your daddy's been shot, he's been killed, something like
Right.
that. So it was very stressful, but I did not verbalize that to them.
Right. And so now you're at a place where you can share it and
Yes,
let it out, and it's all in the book.
exactly. And it's cathartic. Like writing is truly cathartic. It's very cathartic. So I, release and during the writing process, there were times when I was crying.
I can only imagine, right? You like reliving these stories, or even stories that you weren't a part of, like your grandfather and his farm and things like that. I'm sure
Mhm.
you can still imagine though.
Yes.
what could have possibly been going on during that time. Has
Yeah.
your dad read your book?
Yes, he has. He was one of my he wasn't a heavy pen editor, but like he read like the paper draft, like after I like printed out the manuscript. And he read it like after I was like, this is the final draft. So he read it, and then once it's been printed, like he has read the printed version as well. So he's read it at least 3 times that I know of, maybe more than that. But
What
he's
did
read.
he say?
He is beaming with pride. He's very proud. He's also, I think, just very happy that his daughter, who is also like his partner-in-law, has taken the time to like put this in writing because he does so much for so many and doesn't ask for anything in return. So I'm like, it's the least that I can do to make sure that his legacy lives on.
And what better way to do it than to have his child tell that story? Nefertara, how can people purchase the book?
So they can purchase the book by going to, of course, it's on Amazon, but you don't get a signed copy and you don't get like some of the really great things that come in the book. So, what you are guaranteed to get is from me is the book, a couple of paper items, bookmark, and a uh, swag card, but also this like really cool
Oh,
metal
that's
bookmark.
cute.
Thank you. Actually, it's the cover of the book on like a dark and a light format.
Hmm.
For $25, the same price as Amazon, but go to www and it's Nefertara Clark. So that's my first and last name, Nefertara.com. And there you will be able to purchase the book, and that $25 does include shipping. And then you'll also find my other book, Things That Only I Know, which is an estate planning resource guide. But
Hmm.
both of those books are available on my personal website, but they are also available on Amazon. The legacy guide is more expensive on Amazon. So of course I'm encouraging you to purchase them from my website. Um, so that is where you can purchase them. Yes.
And how can people follow you on social media?
So on social media, I am Clark and Clark Law. So that's ClarkAndClark Law. That is our Instagram profile, and same thing on Facebook. And on Facebook, I'm also Nefertara Clark, just my first and last name on Facebook as well. That's how anyone interested can follow me and reach out and get to know me.
Okay. And if anyone is looking for an attorney, how can they contact Clark and Clark as well?
So if you're looking for an attorney in Georgia, you may contact us at 404-234-3514. That number again is 404-234-3514. We are also clarkandclarklawgroup.com. So that's our website. You can submit a contact form through the website, and we'll get back with you as soon as possible.
And do you have an address for your law firm?
Oh, yes. So it is 531 Boulevard Southeast, and that's Atlanta, Georgia, 30312. So that's 531 Boulevard Southeast, or SE, Atlanta, Georgia, 30312. So that is our physical address in Atlanta. We also have an office in Elberton, but I'll just leave that address for now.
Right. Thank you, Nefertara, for being a guest on our show today.
Thank
Um,
you for having me. This is a great conversation.
it was nice to hear a little bit about your background and your dad's story and his journey. We definitely would like to get a copy for
Well,
sure.
thank you.
So I'll be in contact with you.
Okay.
Thank you once again. I have nothing else to say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about Daddy Told Me a Story. So I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. That's all I got for y'all today. Until next time, we're out.
Good night.